Hello guys, welcome back. This is a follow-up video of our previous video, which is understanding ETL: extract, transform, and then load. In our previous video, we try to make you understand what ETL is really all about, and this is a follow-up to that particular video. We want to practicalize some of those things we discussed theoretically in that video. What we want to look at here is we are trying to extract data and then load the data and then transform the data. These are the three things that are involved in the ETL, which is extract, transform, and load. Now, before we do that, I want you to understand that in our previous video we talked about bringing in data from different sources. Data that you want to work with may come from different sources, all the data may not be from one particular source. And some of this data may come in dirty, semi-structured. They may come in structured. But what we want to look at here is if this data that we are talking about now, they come in dirty and we need to transform this data. Excel can transform this data, but Microsoft have made it easy for us by coming up with another aspect of Excel, which is called the Power Query. The Power Query engine is embedded in your Microsoft Excel, which is a powerful tool that you can use. It's one of the best tools you can use to extract, to transform, and then to load your data. Now, this is the data set that we have here now. This data set, I got this data set from cargo.com. You can go to cargo.com and search for Superstore data. You will get this set of data from cargo.com. All you need to do is just register. If you have not registered before, just register with a valid email and cargo.com will give you access to download this video. Thanks to cargo.com for releasing all these millions of data for free. Now, the data we have here, for us to get a clear understanding of the data we have here, this data is the data of a store, a superstore, a supermarket that is selling different products. This is the role ID. We have the role ID, the order ID. We have the date the order was placed. We have the shipping date. We have the shipping mode, the customer that placed the order, the name of the customer that placed the order. These are the ID of the customer that placed the order. We have different segments. We have the customers and we have corporate and home office users. Also, the country where the order was placed, and then we have the city where the order was placed. And then we have also the state, and we also have the postal code. Then we have also the region where the order was placed, and we have the product ID. We have the product category, and we also have the sub-category of the product. Also, we have the name of the product. And then we also have the sales figure for that particular product, the quantity that was sold, was there discount, then the profit generated from that particular sales. So these are the data that we have at hand. And we want to load this data, clean up the data, and then transform the data and then load them for the purpose of data analysis. We'll go to a new Excel sheet. In this new Excel sheet, we want to bring in the data. If you look at this Excel sheet that I've just opened, it looks as if there is nothing happening in this sheet, but we want to bring in the data. There are various ways of accessing the Power Query, but we want to use one method here. one method we are going to use here now is, take note, we say there are various ways of, we want to use one particular method here. And the method we want to use here is, let's go to the data menu. Under the data menu, you have get data. And under the get data, we have from file. And we want to get our data from Excel. Click on that and it shows us something like this. I want to select the source of my data. I have my data as the Superstore data. The Superstore data. I select that and I click on import. Now when I click on import to get this data into Excel, this very navigation window is opened up for me. From this navigation window, Excel have checked and found that there is only one sheet in that particular file, and this is the sheet I want to pick. Now the next thing I do is, if this data is already clean and I want to load into Excel, I can click on load direct, load into Excel from here. But this case, this data is not clean the way I want it to be. If you look at the sample of the data we have here, there are a lot of things we need to work on in this data. So what we want to do is we want to transform the data. So instead of loading the data, I'm going to click on transform data. And then once I click on transform data, you can see that Excel is opening up a new window for me. It looks like a different application of its own. And this application is the Power Query Editor. Now, the Power Query Editor, like I said earlier, is embedded in Excel, but then you can access it. You can access it through these various methods. One of the methods you can access it is what we've just done now. Now, what happened here is Excel have just loaded this data into the Power Query Engine Editor. Now here in this Power Query Engine Editor, we can clean up the data. The importance of using the Power Query Editor is that when we use the Power Query Editor, Power Query will record all the procedure we use in cleaning up the data, so that the next time we want to bring in this same data, or there are new data from this particular source, and we want to load the data into our analysis page, all we need to do is to refresh. And the same steps, the same procedures that we have used, these are the steps we'll be using. So each step we take, Microsoft Excel through the Power Query is going to record each step we took to clean up this record, so that at the end of everything it will save it, and when we refresh, is going to follow the same step to refresh all the data automatically and load them into Excel for us. So here now I have this table, sheet 1. I want to create multiple tables. Why I want to create multiple tables is that if you look at the data here, we need to pick out certain tables from this particular data. Like I said earlier, that we want to create a model here. So to create a model here, we need to bring out the various tables that are required for us to create the model. I'm going to explain that to us gradually as we move into the class. Now, if you look at this data here, this is date, order date, but the order date is showing as if it's number, and that is because if you look at our data type here, it's showing number. Ordinarily in Excel, we can change that, but in Power Query, it's more easier for us to be done. Now, what we need to do here now is just click on this, and then we change this to what? Date. So if I click on date now, it's asking me if I want to add a new step. Yes, I want to add a new step. So you can see that this was the step we were before, and a new step have been added. And that new step is the step that changed this order date from numbers to date. Then the next thing we want to look at here is also this very one now. We want to change this also. this is ship date and it's appearing like numbers. We want to change it to date. So now if we click on date and time, for instance, I will click on date and time, it changes it to date and time. Now this is a new step that have been added. If I click here now and say no, oh, I did a mistake, I just wanted the date, not date and time, I can click on this now and say add a new step or replace the current step. If I click on replace the current step, it replaced the current step and you find out that everything worked out well for me. Now the next thing we want to look at is we want to look at the data gradually and see if all things are well with the data we've just brought in, loaded into this part editor. Now this is text, we are okay with that. This is text, we are okay with that. Now let's be looking at, let's check all the columns to be sure that the data are received in good order. If you look at this is postal code, in numbers is okay. Then we also have let's look at other things like the sales. We have sales. Sales is appearing in number. We can change this to currency. So select currency, and then we have other steps like quantity is in number, is in order. Discount, okay, we can leave discount as it is. Then we have a profit. Profit is in numbers, and we want to change this to currency. Now we have been able to check the record we have in this particular sheet, and we are satisfied that this record are in order. So what I want to do now is I want to duplicate this particular table, this sheet. I will right click here and say duplicate. Now let me explain why I'm duplicating it. Why I'm duplicating it is that I want to generate a table from here. Let's look at the record we have here now. If you look at the record we have here now, there are so many redundant data in this particular sheet. For instance, we have the customer ID, we have the customer name, so, and record like the segment is relating to the customer, then the country of the customer, we have the city of the customer, we have the state, the postal code of the customer, and region of the customer. If you look at all this record here are all relating to the customer. And if a particular customer, one particular customer, for instance now, if a particular customer places an order, we have a customer here, let's say we have this particular customer, Andrew. If Andrew placed 1,000 orders, this record of Andrew were repeated 1,000 times, and this amounts to redundant data. And we want to do away with the redundant data. And how can we do away with the redundant data? One of the ways we can do away with the redundant data is to come up with a table that we handle just customers alone. And we have the record of all the customers here in this particular sheet. So what we are going to do now is we are going to remove some of these very rows that we don't need. For instance now, from this point to this point, all this row here, they are not relating to the customer. We have the role ID, the order ID, the date, ship, and all the ship mode. They are not relating to the customer. So I want to get rid of all of this. We want to remove all of this. So what we can do is we have remove column here. I can just click on remove column, and that will remove all those columns for me. Now I need this column, I need this one, I need this one, I need this one. I need all these columns down to the point of the region. So all these columns down to this point are related to the customer. So I want to get rid of anything from here down is not relating to the customer. So what I can do now is I can hold down my shift key and then click on this and then click on a remove column to get rid of those columns. Other columns that are there that I don't need is the quantity down to the profit are not related to the distinct customers. So we can get rid of this by clicking on delete column. Now I have this record here. All this record here that we have here, they are record relating to the customer. Talking about the customer ID, we have the customer ID, then we have the customer name, and then we have the segment the customer belongs to, the country of the customer, the city, the state, and then we have the postal code, and we also have the region that the customer is coming from. So this record now, you find out that there are duplicated record here. So we want to get rid of the duplicate so that we can come up with just unique customers here. And we can do that by using the column, the customer ID, which is unique. So to get rid of duplicate, what we need to do now is we need to remove all duplicate from this particular sheet. Now, if you look at this, the menu bar here, we have home. The other thing we have here is we have home, we have a transform. We have home, we have transform. Under transform, you have transpose, you have a reverse, and the whole lot of them that we have here. We have a move, we have split, we have paste, and these are all things that, different things that we can use to transform the data. Then apart from transform, we also have column, add column. These are areas where you can use to work on different columns, to add column, to work with different column, then to duplicate column and format and the rest. We have view. Now under view, we have different things that are here under view. But then what we want to use, the one we want to use is consigning the removing of a duplicate. We want to remove duplicate value. So that is our major consign here, is to remove duplicate value. So to remove duplicate value, all we want to remove is duplicate value using our customer ID. So when you go to remove rows, we click on this now, remove rows. Under remove rows, we have what? Remove duplicate. When I click on remove duplicate, it automatically did a process for us to remove all the duplicate records that are here in respect of this particular customer ID. So what we have here now are now unique record of the customer. So if you look at our steps here, remove column was a step that we use. Then we have another step which is a remove duplicate. Now this particular sheet, I want to name this particular sheet. I can click here to right click and name this particular sheet, or I can come over here and change the name of this particular sheet. And this sheet is my customer table. So I will call this customer. So I will call this customers. Now when I click on that and I press my enter key, these have been saved as customer table. So after getting the customer table, the next thing we want to look at is we want to get the location table so that we can get our unique location. And if you look at the record we have in this sheet, you will find out that the columns related to the location is the country, we have the country, we have the city, we have the state, we have the postal code, and we have the region. These are the record related to the location. So if we want to get the record related to the location, we want to pick this record out of this particular sheet. So what we can do is we can click on this very role ID, hold down our shift key, and then locate where we want to start picking the record from. We want to start picking from country, so I'll hold down my shift key to segment. I don't need this very record, these columns here, so I will remove this record, these columns. Then we have this to region. These are the record relating to our location. So the next thing we will look at is, let's remove all the other things that are not related to the location. And from the next thing we have is from product ID down to the end, they are record not related to our location. So I will hold down my shift key and then click here, and I will remove these columns. Now with the record we now have here, these are a record concerning our location. And if we want to drill down the location, if we say we want to use country, all the record here are from United States, one particular country. The city, they are from multiple cities. We have the state, they are from different states. Now what you realize here is, like a state here now, California have about how many cities inside California? So we have other cities inside California. If you have talk of Texas, we have other cities inside Texas. So if we say we want to use city, the unique ID of a unique record from state, that will not work out. Postal code may be relatively okay, but from my experience, I found out that some of the postal codes here were duplicated. So region, we have only 3 regions here. That is the south, the west, and then the central. We have the south, the west, and the central. So these are the regions we have here. So I'm going to use, in my own case now, I'm going to use city as a unique identification for the location. So now what we want to do now is we want to remove the duplicate. So we click on role here and say remove duplicate. We'll click on this. It will remove duplicates of all the cities. So now all the record here now are unique based on this particular, and I want to name this sheet, this table, I want to name it as location. I want to name this as location. When I press my enter key, that will name this particular table as location. So I now have unique customers. I also have unique location. The other thing we want to look at is the product. Now I will click on this very sheet. I will duplicate this very sheet again. When I click on right click and duplicate this very sheet, I have it duplicated like this. The next thing I want to look at is to pick out my unique product. And how do I pick out my unique product? Let's look at those columns that are related to product. We have the product ID, which is one of the columns related to the product. We have the product ID. We have the category. The product were classified into different category and into different subcategory. And then we have the product names, and I think, okay, the product name. I think these are the things related to the product. So what we want to do now is we want to get the unique product out. So this record from this sales down to the profit, these are not related to the unique product we are looking for. So I'm going to remove these columns. And then from the beginning down to product ID, I don't need them for the product table. So I will hold down my shift key and then click on from the beginning to this particular region. I don't need them here. So I'll hold down this and then hold down my shift key. Okay, sorry, let me do this again. I'll click on this, then locate where I want to get to. That is this particular column. So I will hold down my shift key and click, and then I will remove these columns. So after removing that, the record I have here now, they are record concerning our product. We have the product ID, we have the category, we have the subcategory, and the product name. So we want to get rid of duplicate record in this particular table so that we can come up with only the unique product that we have in this table. And to do that, we go back here and say duplicate, remove duplicate. Now it's going to remove duplicate based on this product ID. So this table is our product table, which brought out only the unique product. And we want to rename this particular table. We can right click here and rename. Remember the other time we make use of this. So these are various methods we can use. I right click there, click on rename, and I want to call this particular table my product table. I'll press my enter key, and that rename this table as a product table. Now apart from this, we want to get, the other thing we want to get is the order table. The order table. We want to get the order table. Now under normal circumstances, we don't need the category of the product, we don't need the subcategory, we don't need the name. These are not necessary in an order. What is necessary, what is needed in the order? The product ID should be enough to give us the things we need. So in this case now, let's look at this. Let's go to the product ID. We have the product ID, which is unique. So if we have the product ID, we don't need the category, because the category is like a duplication. This amounts to redundant data that are entering this database. We have subcategory, we have product name. All these things are not needed. As far as we have the product ID, it represents every other thing here. So what I will do is, in this case, I will remove these very ones. They are not needed in this particular order table. So to get an order table that we are trying to get now is, going forward, the company, we are building a model for the company such that going forward they don't need to repeat all this record in the order table. So all they need to do is just to specify the product ID, and then all these ones will be removed. So I'm going to remove these very ones. Then the order, just the product ID, and then we have the sales and order. This information are okay. Then let's look at the location. The location, all we need is just the location ID. And in this case, we've not put a location ID here. So we only use city. But that location table, we did not specify a location ID for the table. So we can do that, but let me not bug us with that very aspect now, because we can do that while we were working on the location table. Look at our location table. We have the city, we have this. So there is supposed to be a unique ID, a unique column that is going to uniquely identify the location. Though city here is uniquely identifying the locations that we have. But then we need to put in something like a location ID, so that that location ID will just be what the what will be specified in the other table. So we'll get to that. The other thing we need now is we've get rid of the product, the duplicate records in the product. Then let's look at the customer. We don't need to specify the name of the customer after specifying the ID of the customer. The customer ID is enough, and the customer ID is supposed to take care of the customer name, the segment, supposed to take care of the country, supposed to take care of the city, the state, the postal code, and also the region. So we can get rid of all this record from this point to this point. We can get rid of all this record from our other table, so that this record are duplicate record. So we don't need all those record from our other table. Now, segment, we can leave segment. We can get rid of segment because segment can also be taken care of from that, but let's just leave segment. The customer name, okay, let's remove all this, the customer name and the segment, because those information are included in our customer table. So once we select a customer table, that will take care of that very aspect for us. Now, the product ID take care of the name of the product, the category the product belongs to, and other things, while the customer ID take care of the name of the customer, the segment the customer belongs to, and other things concerning that. Then the other thing we want to look at again now is we want to look at okay, I think all this record are in order. We need the order ID, we need this, we need this, we need the shipping method. So you'll find out that we've been able to reduce the number of records that are needed in this particular table. This is how the ordered table is supposed to look like, and not having a lot of redundant data in it. So after doing this, we want to name this table as our order table. So we can just come over here now and name this table as order table. Order. So this is our order table. Now, after doing this, you find out that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tables here. Now we will create more tables, but for now, these are the table we need to transform this data, to create a model for this organization. So after doing all this, if you look at all that we did, the various steps we use in doing this, transforming this record, Power Query Editor recorded those steps. It's just like a macro. If you understand, if you are used to macro, this is something that Excel have. We call it macro, but the macro system have been recorded here already for us. So when we save this record, automatically Excel is going to save all the process that we use for transforming this set of data. So subsequently, when we bring in more data into this particular sheet, when we click on refresh, all we need to do, we don't need to go through this rigorous process. All we need to do is to click on refresh, and the Power Query Editor will automatically refresh all the data and load them for us. We've done all this now. So the next step we need to do now is to load the data. So take note, what have we done? We were able to extract the record from various sources. That is talking about the E, and then the T is to transform the data, which we have been able to transform the data. And then the L is talking about loading the data. Now, how do we load the data? Let's come to this very tab at the extreme end here. You have load and close, and then we have load to. Now this is another step that we are going to use. This is load to. Save your changes to this query. Close the Power Editor and specify where you want to load the result to. Now we can use the various methods, but first of all, let's use this very method, which close and load. But I want to save this, so let's use this first. Oh, now when you click on that now, it's asking you where do you want to load this record to. Now, are we loading them to a new sheet, or are we adding them to a data model? Are we loading them to a new sheet, or are we adding them to a data model? Now you have various options here. To load them to table, we have different options to load them to the pivot table report, to load them to this, to load them to this. But what I want is, I want to load them to table. I want to load all the records to table, and then we want to add all the records to our data model. Now we had a separate video where we talk about the data model separately. So but now we want to load them to the data model, and then we click on OK. Now it's running, and all the data that we have worked on, all the table we've created, will be loaded to the data model. Now if you look at the right hand side here, you can see query and connection. The loading is going on, it's loading all the data directly to our data model. And once the data arrive in our data model, from our data model we can create a relationship, and we can create the record the way they are going to look like when we are creating a model. Now if you look at what is happening here, the data have been loaded successfully. The data have been loaded successfully. Now the data have been loaded successfully. If you look at the right hand side, we have the order table. The order table, look at the sheet here we have here. We have order table, we have the customer, we have the location, we have the product table. Now these tables have been loaded successfully into Excel for us. And this was the sheet, the blank sheet that we were when we loaded this record. So this is how we can load the record. If you look at here now, we now have the order still remain the 9,900, and then the customer, we have a total of 793 customers. The location, we have a total of 531 location, and then the product, we have a total of 1,862 products. Now the next thing we will be looking at is, in the next video, we will be looking at creating the model, creating the data model, creating the data model. Now the record we have here, we'll be moving this record into the data model, and then we see how the data model is going to look like. Thank you very much. If you have been able to learn anything in this video, do me a favor, just click on the like button, click on the subscribe, and hit the notification button for the subsequent video, so that you will be notified once the next video comes up. Remember, all we have done here is the practical aspect of ETL, which is extract, transform, and then load data. Thank you.